Yes, we see it. We see it. Here it is. Apollo 11 coming right down toward the prime recovery ship. It isn't red anymore because the skies are that light. Momentarily behind a puffy gray cloud, but it's there.
Apollo 11 should be on main chutes now.
Then the flight of Apollo 11 is over. The men are on the ocean.
Word from Mike Collins inside the spacecraft. He says the crew is excellent. The crew is excellent. The helicopter designated as the retrieval helicopter is equipped with biological isolation garments for the swimmers who will go to the capsule and throw the garments inside the capsule where the astronauts will put them on. They'll hoist the operator protective garment and 2 7-man life rafts, decontamination dispensers, and additional scuba tanks for the swim team, all part of the prime recovery helicopter, Recovery 1.
We will continue to monitor for any conversation between the spacecraft and recovery forces, but we will not initiate a call from now on to the spacecraft from the control center.
Mission Control Houston has now stepped out of the picture, and it is now up to the recovery forces out in the Pacific. They are in control of the Apollo operation from now on.
We might add it. Everything is running right on schedule, so to speak, here, about where they thought it would be in the timeline after landing, as the whole mission has gone. And I don't know, really, with the one step remaining to get the astronauts safely on board the aircraft carrier Hornet, that maybe we should stop, pause, and realize that man has been to the moon and returned safely. That President John F. Kennedy's goal has been met, and in this decade. Going back to the early days of Mercury, splash distances were so far apart from where they were, and to think that man has come 250,000 miles through space and been able to land within 15 miles of a courier is almost unbelievable within itself. And of course you have to also take into consideration that possibly the carrier was off the target.
But the helicopters were there immediately. They were never out of sight of the spacecraft. The helicopter recovery units were there, and the frogmen were in the water almost immediately, getting the flotation collar around while waiting for the Hornet to draw up alongside. That's Lieutenant Clancy Heidelberg is there outside the spacecraft in his raft. They will open the hatch, and Heidelberg will throw the 3 isolation garments inside the spacecraft, which the astronauts will don before emerging and being taken back to the carrier. Then, of course, aboard the Hornet, they will go into a portable quarantine unit, sort of a house trailer arrangement. They're on the carrier and will remain there until that house trailer can return them to Houston Control, or Houston Lunar Recovery Laboratory.
There are, to set the scene for you, there are 3 helicopters hovering over the spacecraft. It's just past Dome slightly there in the recovery area. The aircraft carrier Hornet is now approximately 4 miles away, and is closing within range here to bring the astronauts aboard shortly.
Full rescue procedures now underway.
Two of the spacemen are out of their capsule.
Difficulty securing the hatch, and one of the astronauts is helping him.
The sea is a little rough here. 3 to 6 foot waves was the forecast. And as we look at the spacecraft bobbing in the water, it's easy to tell that the seas are at least that. Winds about 18 knots. The wind's strong enough, in fact, that they pulled the spacecraft over upon landing with its sharp end down, and for a few minutes there, until it was righted by the flotation balloons There was a second loss of communication. The aircraft carrier moving in closely now with the helicopters overhead.
Lieutenant Heidelberg spraying the hatchway on the spacecraft now.
I have sprayed on the forward portion of the command.
All three of them now in the raft, right alongside the space capsule, 100 feet away at the end of a tether, and with an anchor to stabilize it is another raft with the frogmen who had installed the flotation collar. Now the three astronauts and the big man, the man who tossed them their biological isolation garments, Lieutenant Clancy Heidelberg, all four men in the raft, decontaminating each other, scrubbing each other down with disinfectant, and it could be a rather comical sight, and I should imagine that they will have to be very careful that they don't flip that raft over. We had a flip over on Apollo 9, and they're going to be quite agile there in getting themselves scrubbed down without and still maintaining their balance. Once the decontamination process has been completed, then the astronauts will be raised into the helicopter, while the big man, Heidelberg, will stay behind and deflate the raft and deflate the or rather discard the chemical instruments, and the whole thing will sink into the ocean. And that'll be the end of that raft and of the decontaminants. Once the astronauts are back in the helicopter and the big man has completed his decontamination proceedings, he removes his garment, the one designed to keep bugs from getting in. We'll leave it on the raft. We'll leave all the chemical materials. He will then sink the raft with all of its implements, and will swim to the second raft that is at the end of this 100-foot tether. And then that's how they will get back to their ship. The crew on the helicopter that is standing by is piloted by Don S. Jones of Madison, Wisconsin. Lieutenant J.G. Bruce Johnson of Bremerton, Washington is the co-pilot. And the two crewmen standing at the open door that and operating the winches and hoist. These crewmen are Chief Petty Officer Norval Wood of Carmi, Illinois, and Chief Petty Officer Stanley Robnett of Cortales, New Mexico. First astronaut climbing into the net. There he goes. First astronaut on his way to the helicopter. We don't know which one it is. We just don't know yet which one it is. He's suspended from the helicopter, hovering over the raft, 40 feet above. The helicopter's 40 feet above. There are two men inside the helicopter operating the winch, and to help the astronaut, Chief Petty Officer Norval Wood and Chief Petty Officer Stanley Robnett. The first astronaut now inside the helicopter. We don't know which one. 40 feet separate the helicopter and the spacecraft, the surface of the water. Number 2 astronaut now going up. But again, it is not possible to identify the astronauts in the order in which they are going into the spacecraft, or into the helicopter. Swimmer, Lieutenant Clancy Heidelberg, remains in the raft. Third and final astronaut now in midair on the 40-foot lift into the helicopter. He's just suspended in midair there, sitting there in pendulum fashion. Now the hoist is operating again. Now he's almost to the doorway. And the third astronaut is inside the helicopter. All three now can return to the Hornet. All three of them wearing their special biological garments.
The third astronaut is now in the helicopter. The door is closed. The helicopter is going to come back to the ship now. So the astronauts have been to the moon and back, and they've come through the last dangerous part of the flight, which was the re-entry. And it's all over now, but going into quarantine.
You know, I think we ought to mention right here, Ron, rather, that we are about 906 statute miles southwest of Hawaii, moving up a couple of hundred miles along the track from the original splashdown point, which means that we're a good deal closer to Pearl Harbor than we would be otherwise. In fact, we're about 10 hours ahead of the point where we would be at this time if we adhered to the original schedule. And there had been some talk during the night here on the Hornet, as you know, Ron, that perhaps we might make Pearl Harbor by Friday night instead of Saturday morning. But the last I heard from NASA officials was that the original schedule would be followed, and the captain plans to have the carrier tied up at Berth Bravo in Pearl Harbor at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. All three astronauts are now on board helicopter number 66.
The helicopter is loitering out there a bit, as Commander Jones said it would. This is to give the two crew members in the back a chance to come up forward and take off their isolation garments, and leaving in the back of the helicopter only Dr. Carpentier and the two astronauts.
This will probably be the photo chopper coming in. They're generally the first to come in. Now that wheel around in that wide circle, and they'll make a formation. And swim one chopper that still has Frogman aboard will come up tight on Commander Jones's wing, just as a precaution.
And swim two, Pete, will just stay out there, babysitting, as they say, with the swimmers who dropped into the water alongside the command module, who helped in the recovery of the astronauts. They will stay with the command module until it is alongside the starboard side of the carrier and is about to be brought up onto the number 3 elevator. Then they will climb aboard the carrier in cargo nets. Renewed signs down here on the hangar deck of the presidential presence. Secret Service men are reappearing on the hangar deck.
Everyone has a green deck.
Beginning to rain up here. The President has a overhang on that bridge, so he's not getting wet.
We believe the President may have moved off the bridge, possibly on his way down.
It's only a very short trip.
Oh, there he is. He's moved aft. And he's back to the Admiral's Bridge, just outside Flag Flood. No baseball caps this time, and no handshakes. These astronauts headed for weeks of isolation. Fantastic event. Papa Canino, Ohio. A man from Montclair, New Jersey. Walk on another planet. And their partner. This incredible event. Recovery complete. Shut down. said, are wearing protective gear. There goes the band. We will probably have a musical salute as they lower 66 to the hangar deck. Well, you can't say the Navy isn't ecumenical. They're playing the Air Force song. Of course, Commander Neil Armstrong is a civilian, but he once was a Navy man. However, you do have the other two members of the crew. Air Force man Buzz Aldrin, full colonel, Mike Collins, lieutenant colonel. Both graduates not of the Air Force Academy, but the United States Military Academy at West Point.
Keith, I don't know if you noticed, but almost as soon as the helicopter landed, a chief ran out and stuck a third symbol of a spacecraft on the nose.
Oh, we got 3 decals now, yeah.
And also they radioed from the helicopter to the bridge. Now it's Hornet +3. That's the motto of this trip, and you see buttons all over the ship. In other words, all the men who went out with the Hornet are coming back +3 more, the 3 astronauts.
Old number 66 has got Apollo decal for Apollo 8, Apollo 10, now Apollo 11. I know the helicopter can make that statement.
That was Chief Bradley, the line chief of Helicopter Squadron 4, who ran out and put that other spacecraft symbol on, and also a sign saying Hornet +3.
You can't see in the back there, it's just too dark through that window. Dr. D, he's talking. NASA Recovery Chief John Stonecipher, his deputy, and Ben James are on the elevator. There's always Dr. Stokin, who leaped forward to pump their hands when they came out of the helicopter. Not this time.
There you see a close-up of the new symbol. Apollo 8, Apollo 10, and Apollo 11. President Nixon seems genuinely moved by this moment. Crew's getting out, 3 of them anyhow. They leave one man in the helicopter, as they say, to ride the brakes. It's a rule on helicopters that you don't move a helicopter unless somebody's there with their foot on the brake in case it starts rolling toward the edge.
Number 3 elevator will be leaving in 1 minute.
And down here on the hangar deck, all's in readiness for the big moment. Number 3 elevator on the port side is still in the raised position. No, it's down now. Down now. I couldn't see from my point. It's now down, and the tractor is being moved back to haul the helicopter off the number 2 elevator and back here to its position alongside the mobile quarantine facility. Band's still playing joyously up on the flight deck.
President Nixon is still on the flag bridge. We expect he'll be coming down soon.
Here comes the number 66 being hauled inboard from number 2 elevator very slowly by the tractor. The procedure is for the tractor to pull it straight across the ships, and it will then be backed by the tractor. So it's being pulled now with the nose forward in order to move it around in the correct position. There it goes. Now the tail of number 66 is pointing aft along the hangar deck. The astronaut's still inside. holding the tail back. This is the standard procedure when the helicopter is being...
Dallas, the president, we believe, has left the flag bridge. At least he's not out there leaning over any longer.
Right.
And the gaggle of photographers seems to be following inside.
It's possible that the president's schedule at this point may indicate some little departure from what had been projected originally. We've been speculating all along that the president wouldn't just stay up there on the flag bridge all this while, and he may move somewhere else in the ship. But he's not expected down here again for about 40 minutes. That will give Dr. Carpentier, the astronaut's physician, time to perform some initial medical tests on the astronauts. Well, there's no doubt that they're in good condition on the basis of what we've heard already. And after about 40 minutes, the president will come down here to the hangar deck and will make that personal statement to the astronauts. It's quite possible that they will be able to say something to him because they'll be wearing lavalier microphones around their necks, and anything they say will be carried by loudspeaker to those of us gathered here on the hangar deck. Large numbers of sailors behind the lines standing there waiting to watch this historic moment, the first appearance of the astronauts before anybody but the swimmers and the crew of number 66 helicopter. Dr. Don Stolken walking along the blue path. He's the chief of the NASA recovery team on board, talking now with John Stonecipher, the assistant chief. Helicopter being moved slowly back here with the flight crew, the flight deck crew in yellow jerseys. Man up ahead about to blow the whistle for it to stop. The hatch is just about in position, a few more feet. There it goes. That's it. Dr. Stolken, Dr. Stonecipher personally moved the flight of wooden steps up to the hatch on the starboard side of the helicopter.
The astronauts emerged to take their bows. Ahead was a world tour, but the first to hail them were their own people. People who had an understandable surge of pride when the American flag was raised on the moon.
Waving to the crowd of cheering sailors, moving swiftly into the mobile quarantine facility, Dr. Carpentier following and closing the door. And the door closes. The astronauts are on board. They're in the mobile quarantine facility. The curtains have been drawn. All of them in fine shape, good condition, waving and smiling. You could see them smiling through their masks. Obviously overjoyed, jubilant to be back on board at the end of their historic mission, which saw Armstrong and Aldrin become the first men in history to set foot on the moon. The tunnel is already in place, affixed to the door in the side of the mobile quarantine facility. And when the command module is brought back on board, it will be affixed to the other end of the tunnel. And John Hirosaki, the NASA project engineer inside the mobile quarantine facility, will then be able to go through the tunnel and go back into the command module and remove the lunar samples. Already, the steps, the wooden steps which they used coming down from the helicopter are being sprayed with glutaraldehyde, a decontaminant solution. That's one of the procedures established by NASA as a means of preventing contamination by any lunar viruses brought back, if any there are, brought back by the returning astronauts. Well, it was a big moment. It didn't last long. They're already going through the initial procedures inside the mobile quarantine facility.
When Armstrong was growing up here, the town looked pretty much the same. He fished in the Auglaize River, was a science bug in high school, worked afternoons in Brading's drugstore. The family had moved around a lot after Neil's birth in 1930, but they came back to Wapakoneta to stay in 1945. People who remember young Armstrong did not regard him then as someone special, but all their memories are fond ones, and he reciprocates. After Gemini 8, Armstrong came back for a parade and a pageant and found signs bearing his name all over town. "You're my people," he told them. "I'm proud to be one of you." Proudest of all are the residents of 912 Neil Armstrong Drive, Wapakoneta, Mr. and Mrs. Stephen Armstrong.
He was interested in airplanes from the time he was a little boy. His mother bought him a 20-cent airplane in a 10-cent store, and he built that. Then from the 20-cent, he went to a 50-center and went on up, and pretty soon he was building them with motors and flying them and testing them.
And of all the subjects that he took, of course, there was always all the math he could get and all the science he could get. But I can truthfully say he loved school. I think he loved every subject. I really do.
Possibly Neil's outstanding project, for which I remember him best, is his work in connection with study of aviation and the building of a wind tunnel.
Well, he built it so strong that it caused great currents in the home and of course, vibrated the whole home. It was one of those things that he enjoyed most, and Mr. Kreitz, his teacher, was very instrumental in helping him.
We have a small airport just out of town here, about 3 miles, and before Neil was old enough to drive a car, to get his license, he became interested in aviation. He worked at the drugstore, and he'd leave there, take his wheel right out to the airport, and he would talk with those, work with them. And at about 16, then, he bought an old wreck of a plane, which he rebuilt, and he was flying that plane at 16 years of age before he was old enough to get his license.
After he graduated from high school, he decided to go to Purdue University because of the aeronautical program that they offered and the degree.
Armstrong mastered everything that flies. He became a Navy jet pilot, a glider expert, and before becoming an astronaut was one of the top test pilots in the country. He flew both the B-52 mothership and the X-15 rocket plane. He took an X-15 higher than 200,000 feet at a speed of 4,000 miles an hour.
Oh, my. I can remember how scared I was when he first flew from the airport to the university. When, let's see, before school started, why they need to go in a week or so ahead of time and make all their preparations. And so he flew this particular time, and I know he said, "Now, Mom, when I go over the house, when I waggle my wings, you know I'm saying hi to you." And so I can remember how scared I was. You know, I said, "Well, how will you find the place to land?" "Oh," he said, "I'll find it." And he did, of course. And, of course, you have those fears with each advancement as he went along. Why, you have those same fears, but, of course, he always was so confident himself that he made us feel like he'd get along all right.
He was a boy that never said much. He just, actions spoke louder than words, and he was always constantly from a little boy off.
Collins had been a wrestler and a baseball and football letterman in high school. At the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston, he vies with astronaut Walter Cunningham for the handball championship. The competition is fierce. Collins usually wins. Collins is 5'11", 165 pounds, looks scrawny, and is balding. He is not talkative, although compared to his companions on Apollo 11, he is garrulous. He is, as most astronauts are, a test pilot. He is an Air Force lieutenant colonel, has 2 daughters and a son, and says he has one overriding concern: all the publicity he will get as a result of the moon mission. Collins is an alumnus of St. Albans School, the rather exclusive academy attached to the Episcopal Cathedral in Washington. President Johnson's daughters went to the Girls' Academy there, and both schools have had more than their share of famous graduates. But Collins is well remembered as person, athlete, and friend.
Mike is a very quiet, self-effacing kind of fellow. I'd characterize him as a kind of fellow who does rather than talks. I first met him in 1944 when we were in school together at St. Albans School in Washington. Mike was extremely well-liked, popular with both the students and the faculty at the school there. He had virtually every honor that a student at that particular school can have. The yearbook is called The Albanian. This is the school seal, and the year 1948 that Mike graduated. There's Mike, and there's me, and I hope that our taste in ties has improved since then. Here's a picture as Mike is a member of the Athletic Association that governed the giving of letters and athletic awards. Here's a page listing the varsity letter winners. Showed that he lettered in football and was captain of the wrestling team with a star to show that he wrestled in the Lehigh tournament. And here's a picture of the baseball team. And here's Mike right on the end. They're wearing a very determined look on his face.
The St. Albans class prophecy said Collins would be a soldier. That was safe. His father was a general. His uncle was the famous General Lightning Joe Collins. His older brother is a brigadier general of paratroops.
I think Michael always had in mind that he wanted to be in the military service, particularly to go to West Point. And I think that he, during this time, before he went to West Point, he spent a great deal of his time and effort in preparing himself for a military career.
He was bound for West Point from the day he was born, as far as I know. Certainly all the time I knew him.
Michael hasn't talked to us terribly much about what he desired to do in the astronaut program itself. I think primarily because he's been pretty busy being an astronaut, and the rest of us have been pretty busy doing other things. But I do know that he at one point told me he wanted to be the outside man on the moon.
32 years ago, the Edgemont School presented The Wizard of Oz. In the title role was the future Air Force Colonel, MIT PhD, and man on the moon, Edwin Aldrin, Jr. 10 years later, he was a handsome young man near the head of his high school class and all New Jersey center on the undefeated Montclair football team.
He was a real tiger in sports and gymnastics, starting at, whatever level boys start playing football. He had to have the helmet and the pads and the shirt to be one of the guys. His interest in football, which having started at a young, tender age, continued through high school and on into West Point, although he never was a star of the West Point team.
He went direct from high school into West Point and was #1 in his class the first year. He graduated third in the class of 1951. His interest in flying, as far as I know, developed at West Point because it was before his graduation he chose to be commissioned in the Air Force and then went into his flying. I presume that he got his interest to some degree because he had flights with me and saw something about flying.
Aldrin was his father's son. He took to flying naturally, and soon after winning his wings, he was sent to Korea. That war was just ending, but Aldrin shot down 2 enemy MiGs and got his name in print.
He went, I think it was Christmas Day, out of California of 1952. the interesting thing about his Korean experience was when friends called my attention to the Life magazine that came out showing that he had made the picture of the week, because when he shot down this MiG, his gun camera got the first evidence of the type of ejection that the pilot of the MiG used. The first time they knew that the MiG used powder to blow the pilot out of his seat.
One weekend he arrived at a local Air Force base to spend some time with us, and he streaked down in a shiny jet with his helmet and flight suit on, and the boys couldn't have been pulled away from that sight. It made their father have a little tough image to fight because he wasn't able to arrive in a jet that night. The weekend was spent by the boys wearing the helmet and looking at themselves in the mirror or sharing it with their friends. That afternoon, the older boy had a baseball game, and he brought the entire team over just to stand back and watch him.
It went very, very well.
What was your total time, Don?
Gee, I'd have to look at the log sheet, Dallas. I don't know, but I feel we're about 5 or 6 minutes ahead of our schedule. It just couldn't have gone more smoothly. Chief Wood here did a magnificent job, and Chief Robnett, who is still locked up in the airplane, also did well.
Chief Wood, did you have a chance to say anything to the astronauts? Did they say anything to you?
No, sir. With the bigs on, they couldn't have heard me, and with the headset we had on, I couldn't hear anything they said. Their actions indicated they were cheerful all the way through the entire procedure.
Was there any sort of message that they conveyed in some way or other to you?
No, sir. We didn't really have time. We were too busy trying to get our gear together to get back on board.
Lieutenant Johnson, you probably got a look at them. You were flying co-pilot.
Yes, I was. I looked back as we got out of the helicopter, and one of them gave me a thumbs up. And that's the only signal I got from them. They sure looked cheerful, though. Glad to get back. Boy, it's a big thrill for me to pick them up, too.
Was there any complications at any point, Don?
None whatsoever, Dallas. It just went very, very smoothly. Better than the Simex we had 2 days ago. So I was
it could hardly go any better than that.
No, it couldn't. No, I was very pleased. Exactly according to plan, and of course, it's a great sense of relief to us to know that it was done and done well. So satisfied.
Well, you've now performed your second manned spacecraft recovery.
This is the third one for HS4. As you know, Chuck Smiley had the last one on 10, and we had 8.
But you yourself.
So it's a big accomplishment for the squadron, and we're all real proud of it.
What do you think will happen to helicopter number 66 now? Will it be put in some special place?
Well, as I told you, my junior officer suggested it be bronzed and put in the Smithsonian. No, I don't think so. It's still a real good flying machine, and we'll get a lot of use out of it.
I suspect it still has a good many flying hours ahead of it.
Sure does. Sure does.
Well, Don, congratulations again, Lieutenant Johnson, Chief Wood. Thank you very much. And congratulations also to Chief Robnett.
Thank you.
Chief Robnett is still inside the helicopter, which very soon now will be moved back up to the flight deck and will be moved back toward the fantail, and then will be sealed after Chief Robnett is out of it, and will be pumped full of formaldehyde gas and left to sit there for a couple of hours as an additional measure against possible decontamination. Hornet +3. The slogan of this carrier throughout the Apollo 11 cruise, the slogan has now been fulfilled. Hornet has fulfilled its mission, and it has picked up 3 additional men. So it's Hornet +3. Now, down there below the window, very shortly now, will be affixed the presidential seal in advance of President Nixon's arrival. Those 2 significant signs will, in essence, sum up this mission in its very briefest form. Hornet +3. Hornet has recovered the 3 astronauts back from the moon, and President Nixon, signaling the importance of this great moment in the history of manned space flight, will be coming down to congratulate the astronauts in person.
Dallas, the Hornet started out with 2,222 people on board, and now the 3 more.
Actually, it has a good many more than that at the moment, but some of them
fact, all of the new arrivals will be leaving shortly.
Buzz and Mike, I want you to know that I think I'm the luckiest man in the world. And I say this not only because I have the honor to be President of the United States, but particularly because I have the privilege of speaking for so many and welcoming you back to Earth. I could tell you about all the messages we've received in Washington. Over 100 foreign governments, emperors and presidents and prime ministers and kings have sent the most warm messages that we've ever received. They represent over 2 billion people on this earth, all of them who have had the opportunity through television to see what you have done. And then I also bring you messages from members of the cabinet and members of the Senate and members of the House and the Space Agency, from the streets of San Francisco, where people stopped me a few days ago, and you all love that city, I know, as I do. But most important, I had a telephone call yesterday. The toll wasn't incidentally as great as the one I made to you fellows on the moon. I made that correct, incidentally, in case you didn't know. But I called in my view, three of the greatest ladies and most courageous ladies in the whole world today, your wives. And from Jan and Joan and Pat, I bring their love and their congratulations. We think it's just wonderful that they could have participated, at least through television, in this return. We're only sorry they couldn't be here. And also, I've got to let you in a little secret. I made a date with them. I invited them to dinner on the 13th of August, right after you come out of quarantine. It will be a state dinner held in Los Angeles. The governors of all the 50 states will be there, the ambassadors, others from around the world and in America. And they told me that you would come too. And all I want to know, will you come? We want to honor you then.
We'll do anything you say, Mr. President. Anytime.
One question I think that all of us would like to ask, as we saw you bouncing around in that boat out there, I wonder if that wasn't the hardest part of the journey. Was that the only, did any of you get seasick?
No, we didn't, and it was one of the harder parts, but it was one of the most pleasant, we can assure you.
Yeah. Well, I just know that you can sense what we all sense when you get back now. Have you been able to follow some of the things that happened when you've gone? Did you know about the All-Star game?
Yes, sir. The capsule communicators have been giving us daily news reports.
Yeah. Were you American League or National League?
I'm a National League man.
Non-partisan, sir. Yeah, that's right. There's the politician in the group, right.
Well, yeah, you missed that game.
Yes. Well, you knew that, too. You really heard the rain.
The rain. Right. Well, we haven't learned to control the weather yet, but that's something we can look forward to tomorrow's challenge.
Right. Well, I could summarize it because I don't want to hold you now. You have so much more to do, and gee, you look great. You feel as good as you feel great.
I feel just perfect, Mr. President.
Yeah. I understand Frank Borman says you're a little younger by reason of having going into space. Is that right? Do you feel that way? A little younger?
Well, a lot younger than Frank Borman.
There he is over there. Come on over, Frank, so they can see you. And you going to take that lying down? Or
It looks like he has aged in the last couple of weeks.
Come on, Frank.
Mr. President, the one thing I wanted, we have a poet in Mike Collins, and he really gave me a hard time for describing the words fantastic and beautiful. And I counted them. In 3 minutes up there, you used 4 fantastics and 2 beautifuls.
Well, just let me close off with this one thing. I was thinking, as you know, as you came down, and we knew it was a success, and it had only been 8 days, just a week, a long week, that this is the greatest week in the history of the world since the creation. Because as a result of what happened in this week, the world is bigger infinitely. And also, as I'm going to find on this trip around the world, and as Secretary Rogers will find that he covers the other countries in Asia, as a result of what you've done, the world's never been closer together before. And we just thank you for that. And I only hope that all of us in government, all of us in America, that as a result of what you've done, we can do our job a little better. We can reach for the stars just as you have reached so far from the stars. We don't want to hold you any longer. Anybody have a last word? How about promotions? Do you think we could arrange something?
We're just pleased to be back and very honored that you were so kind as to come out here and welcome us back. Yeah. And we look forward to getting out of this quarantine and talking without having glass between us.
And incidentally, the speeches that you have to make at this dinner can be very short. And if you want to say fantastic or beautiful, that's all right with us. Don't try to think of any new adjectives. They've all been said. And now I think, incidentally, that all of us the millions that are seeing us on television now, seeing you, would feel as I do that, in a sense, our prayers have been answered. And I think it would be very appropriate if Chaplain Pierto, the chaplain of this ship, were to offer a prayer of thanksgiving. And if he would step up now, Chaplain, thank you.
Let us pray. Lord God, our Heavenly Father, our minds are staggered and our spirits exultant with the magnitude and precision of this entire Apollo 11 mission. We have spent the past week in communal anxiety and hope as our astronauts sped through the glories and dangers of the heavens. As we try to understand and analyze the scope of this achievement for human life, our reason is overwhelmed with abounding gratitude and joy, even as we realize the increasing challenges of the future. This magnificent event illustrates anew what man can accomplish when purpose is firm and intent corporate. A man on the moon was promised in this decade, and though some were unconvinced, the reality is with us this morning in the persons of astronauts Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins. We applaud their splendid exploits, and we pour out our thanksgiving for their safe return to us, to their families, to all mankind. From our inmost beings, we sing humble yet exuberant praise. May the great effort and commitment seen in this Project Apollo inspire our lives to move similarly in other areas of need. May we, the people, by our enthusiasm and devotion and insight, move to new landings in brotherhood, human concern, and mutual respect. May our country, afire with inventive leadership and backed by a committed followership, blaze new trails into all areas of human care. See our enthusiasm and bless our joy with dedicated purpose toward the many needs at hand. Link us in friendship with peoples throughout the world as we strive together to better the human condition. Grant us peace, beginning in our own hearts, and a mind attuned with goodwill towards our neighbor. All this we pray as our thanksgiving rings out to Thee in the name of our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
craft on his trip around the world. The Hornet is sailing to Honolulu. It arrives there tomorrow. And from there, the astronauts in their sealed container will be flown to Houston, where a somewhat roomier quarantine building awaits them. So far, there is no evidence whatever of any infection or of any unwholesome effects on the moon. If it turns out, as everyone expects, that there won't be any, then Apollo 11 will have been a rarity in human affairs, a total success, and a credit to the American people and to the human race. Even in the distant future, when Vietnam is just one line on the list of American wars, historians will have to say something about man's first step on the moon. Anyone who is now too old to be trusted, over 30 that is, has seen some history made, but in most cases he probably didn't know it. It is hard to tell what will be history until it is history. And for most of us, that's too long to wait. Whoever may have been standing or idling about the docks in Palos, in Spain, in 1492, watching an Italian captain sail away in 3 leaky boats with a quarrelsome crew, certainly didn't know what they were seeing. The Italian captain didn't know himself. And now, when a highway department finally builds a 2-lane bridge over some muddy creek, and a small-town mayor comes out to cut the ribbon and to make a speech while the high school band plays Under the Double Eagle, the mayor says, as he almost has to say, that history has been made here today. Well, a first is a first, and it can only be done once. And to say that somebody is about to land on the moon and walk around on it while almost everybody on Earth watches is just about too much to swallow. I almost don't even believe it. But it's true. And if this is not a permanent, enduring event in human history, then nothing is. And it certainly will be remembered as long as mankind remembers anything.